Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to experience the emotional night when Jack waits alone in the hospital corridor while Tu Tien fights through labor to bring baby Anna safely into the world. Will everything go smoothly for this little family? Stay with us to find out. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next stories. Jack had never imagined one night could feel this long. He sat on a hard plastic chair in the hospital corridor, elbows on his knees, fingers laced so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, washing the hallway in a flat, sleepless glow, while a distant baby cried and a door clicked shut. The wall clock kept ticking, second after second, but for Jack, it felt like time had stopped moving. At the end of the corridor, behind a heavy white door, Tu Tien was in the delivery room. That single fact was the center of his whole universe. His wife, their baby, the quiet future they had dreamed about while lying awake at night. All of it was in there, close enough to reach yet completely out of his hands. All he could do was wait and try not to fall apart. He dragged a hand over his tired face and felt the roughness of his unshaven chin. The shirt he wore still smelled faintly of dust and sunlight from the farm. When the contractions had started at home, his heart had jumped into his throat, but he had forced his hands to stay steady as he helped Tu Tien into the car. She had tried to smile, saying it was probably nothing serious. They both knew that was a lie. In the back seat, Mother Ly had clutched her bag and a small string of prayer beads, whispering quietly all the way to the hospital. Now she sat a few chairs away, back straight, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes fixed on the same door Jack could not stop staring at. The deep lines on her face looked sharper than usual, carved by worry and a kind of love he suddenly understood in a new way. After a long silence, she stood and walked over to him. "Jack," she said softly, holding out a small bottle of water. "Drink a little, son. Your lips are dry." He blinked as if waking from a dream, then took it from her with shaking fingers. "Thank you, Mom," he murmured. The word still felt new on his tongue, but it settled in his chest, like something that had always been meant to be there. He drank a few gulps. The cold water slid down his throat and made him aware of how tense his body was. His shoulders ached, his back hurt, and his eyes burned from hours without sleep, and from tears he refused to let fall too soon. "She is strong, that girl of yours," Mother Ly said, lowering herself into the chair beside him. "A woman like that does not give up halfway. She will bring your baby safely into this world." Jack tried to smile, but his voice came out rough. "I know she is strong," he said. "I just keep thinking, what if something goes wrong? What if I lose her? What if I lose them both? I do not know who I am without them." Mother Ly shook her head gently. "Do not say that," she answered softly. "You have done everything you can. The doctors are doing everything they can. The rest, we leave to heaven." He nodded, not trusting his voice. Her words did not erase the fear, but they wrapped around it like a thin blanket, giving it less space to grow. His thoughts drifted back to an earlier visit to this same hospital, months ago, when the room had been dim and quiet, and the only light came from the blue glow of the ultrasound screen. Tu Tien had lain on the bed, fingers locked around his, eyes bright and nervous. Jack had stared at the monitor, trying to understand the strange shapes on the screen. until the doctor pointed to a tiny flutter. "There," the doctor had said. "Do you hear that?" A fast, steady sound had filled the room, like a small drum beating deep underground, their baby's heartbeat. Standing there, listening to that fragile rhythm, he had silently made a promise. "I will protect you. I will protect both of you, whatever it costs." Now in the cold corridor, that memory replayed again and again. If that little heartbeat had been strong then, he told himself, it could still be strong now. A nurse pushed a metal cart past him, the squeak of the wheels snapping him back to the present. He stood up before he realized he was moving. "Excuse me," he asked, his voice rough. "My wife is in that delivery room. Is she okay?" The nurse checked the room number, then looked at his pale, anxious face. She had seen husbands like him many times before, sitting in hallways that felt endless. "The doctors are still with her," she said gently. "First babies usually take longer. Everything is progressing normally. You should try to rest a little, sir." Rest. The word sounded strange. How could he rest when he did not even know if his family was safe? "Thank you," he muttered anyway, because he had no better words. Jack kept his eyes on the door. He tried to imagine what was happening on the other side. The steady beep of machines, the calm instructions of the doctors, the quick movements of nurses. In the middle of all that, he pictured Tu Tien, hair damp with sweat, hands gripping the bed, breathing hard but refusing to quit. At home, she often talked to their baby as if it could already understand, standing in the garden with one hand on her belly. He was just about to get up and walk the hallway again when he heard it. The soft, decisive sound of a lock turning. The delivery room door opened. For a heartbeat, all he saw was bright lights spilling into the dim corridor. Then the doctor stepped out, still dressed in a pale green gown and cap, mask hanging loosely around his neck. In his arms, wrapped carefully in a white blanket, was a tiny bundle. Jack's heart stopped and then started racing so fast he felt lightheaded. He pushed himself to his feet so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. Beside him, Mother Loy rose too, one hand pressed to her chest, eyes already full of tears. The doctor walked toward them, his face tired but softened by a small, satisfied smile. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "Mother and baby are both healthy." In that instant, the world narrowed to that one sentence. Jack did not hear the television, the footsteps, or the hum of the lights anymore. All he heard were those words, echoing through him like a prayer finally answered, loosening something that had been clenched inside his chest all night as the tiny bundle in the doctor's arms breathed softly against the blanket. Jack didn't move at first. He just stared at the small bundle in the doctor's arms, the words, "Mother and baby are both healthy," still ringing in his head like a bell. The doctor stepped closer. "Would you like to hold her?" he asked. Jack's hands lifted on instinct, then stopped halfway. I'm scared I'll drop her," he admitted, voice hoarse. "You won't," the doctor said gently. "Just support her head. She's stronger than she looks." Carefully, he lowered the baby into Jack's arms. The weight was light, but it felt huge. Warmth soaked through the blanket and straight into Jack's chest. He finally dared to look down. A tiny face lay nestled in the folds of white cloth. Her eyes were closed, lashes barely visible against soft skin. Her nose was small, her mouth relaxed, her cheeks still a little red. A few damp strands of dark hair stuck to her forehead. She didn't cry. She simply breathed. Small, steady breaths that somehow calmed the chaos in his chest. "Anna," he whispered. Saying her name out loud made everything real. "Hi, Anna. I'm your dad." The word dad caught in his throat. Tears blurred his vision and slipped down his cheeks before he could stop them. One drop landed on the edge of the blanket. He didn't bother wiping his face. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel embarrassed to cry. Beside him, Mother Ly covered her mouth with one hand. She had seen him scared, angry, stubborn, but never like this. "Let Grandma see her," she said softly. Jack turned a little so she could lean in. She bent forward, eyes shining, and studied the baby's face as if trying to memorize every detail. "My sweet little granddaughter," she whispered in Vietnamese and then again in low, careful English. "You did well. Welcome." For a moment, the world shrank to 3 people and one tiny heartbeat in a hospital hallway. The doctor checked his watch and nodded toward the door. "We're moving your wife to the recovery room now," he said. "You can come along." "Thank you," Jack answered, the words small compared to what he felt. He walked down the corridor with Anna pressed to his chest. The hallway that had seemed cold and endless now felt shorter, softer. Each step was slow and careful, as if the tiles might crack if he moved too fast. The recovery room was quiet, with softer lights and a single bed. When they wheeled Tu Tien in, Jack's breath hitched. She lay pale against the pillows, hair damp, lips dry, eyes closed, her body limp with exhaustion. He stepped closer so she would see him first. "Tu Tien," he said gently. "It's me. I'm here." Her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, she turned her head and focused on his face. When she saw the bundle in his arms, her expression changed. The tiredness was still there, but something bright flickered underneath. "Is that our baby?" she asked. Her voice cracked and thin. Jack nodded quickly. "This is Anna," he said. "Our daughter. The doctor says you're both okay. She's perfect." A tiny, shaky smile appeared on her lips. For hours, she had pushed through pain she could barely describe. Now, finally, she had something to hold on to. "Can I hold her?" she whispered. The nurse adjusted the bed and helped Jack step closer. His legs felt strangely weak, like he was learning to walk all over again, with the nurse guiding his hands. He slowly passed Anna into Tu Tien's arms. The baby settled against her chest, cheek pressing lightly against her skin. Tu Tien let out a long, broken sigh. The pain hadn't gone, but it no longer felt like the only thing in the room. Anna made a little sound and moved her fingers, grabbing a tiny fold of her mother's gown. "Hi, Con," Tu Tien whispered. "Hello, my little girl." Her eyes filled, but this time the tears came with a smile. She traced a gentle line along Anna's cheek. "I'm your mom," she said. "Thank you for arriving safely. Thank you for holding on." Jack stood by the bed, one hand resting on the rail, the other brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. He looked at the two of them together and felt something steady inside him that hadn't been there before. Behind them, Mother Ly watched in silence. In her mind, the scene overlapped with an old memory, a younger version of herself in another hospital, a nurse placing a crying baby boy, Jack, into her arms. She remembered the fear, the joy, the promise she made without saying a word. "I'll do my best so you never feel alone." Now she saw her son making the same promise with his eyes. "You did well, Con," she said softly, stepping closer to wipe the sweat from Tu Tien's temple. "You were very brave." "I was so scared," Tu Tien admitted. "There was a moment I thought I couldn't do it. But I kept thinking about her. And about you two waiting outside. I didn't want to let anyone down." Jack squeezed the rail gently. "You didn't," he said. "You'll never do this alone. Whatever happens next, we face it together. The three of us. And Mom, too." That made Mother Loy laugh quietly through her tears. "4 of us," she corrected. "And the house full of noise you two promised me." Later, after the nurses had finished checking monitors and writing numbers on charts, the room slowly quieted. Someone dimmed the main light and left a single warm lamp glowing near the bed. The harsh white of the hospital softened into something almost cozy. Anna, now wrapped in a fresh blanket, slept in the crook of her mother's arm. Her face had relaxed, her mouth forming the faintest shape of a smile. One small hand rested near Jack's fingers. He sat on the edge of the bed, turned slightly toward them. Tu Tien leaned back against the pillows, eyes half open, watching their daughter as if she were the most fragile and most precious thing on earth. Mother Loy stood nearby, one hand lightly touching the corner of the blanket. No one rushed to speak. They simply stayed there, breathing the same warm air, listening to the soft sound of Anna's tiny breaths. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. The world beyond the window, construction sites, bills, work, all the usual noise, waited somewhere far away. In this small room, time moved differently. It stretched and slowed, making space for a new beginning. Jack looked from the baby to the 2 women beside him and felt his chest tighten and then expand with something deep and steady. Pride, gratitude, fear, love, all tangled together. He leaned in a little closer. "Welcome to the family, little Anna," he whispered. This time he didn't cry. He just smiled, and so did the women beside him. They didn't add any more words. They didn't need to. The way they were all looking at that tiny, sleeping face already said everything. You are loved. You are safe. You are home now. After a long, sleepless night in the hospital corridor, Jack anxiously waits while Tu Tien is in the delivery room, terrified of losing the 2 people he loves most. Every sound from behind the door makes his heart race, until the doctor finally steps out, gently placing tiny baby Anna into his shaking arms and announcing that both mother and child are safe. Overwhelmed, Jack bursts into tears as he whispers his first greeting to his daughter. Later, in the recovery room, an exhausted Tu Tien holds Anna skin to skin on her chest and quietly says hello to the little life she fought so hard to bring into the world. Under the warm glow of the bedside lamp, 3 generations, Grandma Loy, Jack, and Tu Tien, silently watch baby Anna sleep, feeling that their real family story has just begun.